Hello. So I think we will start. I will dive in what we will dealing today, but also some instruction for you that you are aware how the discussion will be going. So briefly, I start not with theoretical background approaches about what deliberative democracy means, because we have a really wonderful guests that they will talk about it in praxis. What I would like to reflect at the beginning would be what are the challenges, why we are right now like talking about it, not right now, but like in the recent years. And also I will hand the floor to all our speakers to introduce their insights, their case studies, and also the problems that they had when they implement their assemblies or other forms of deliberative democracy. So, but firstly of all, my name is Viera. Surname not pronounced because it's not even Russia, it's hardly to pronounce when I use all the special characters. But let me introduce you to all the guests and also how we approach. So after myself, the short insight, the first speaker, Damir Kapijic, will be talking about a broader and inspiring thoughts why deliberative democracy is needed right now, what are the pros and cons, how they were implemented across the globe and basically in Europe, and also in those countries which are suffering on migration wave or in conflict zones, etc. The second speaker will be Eva Bordos, hopefully. She will be getting insight from Hungary, Central Eastern Europe, and talk more about the survey that they did in the past, and also a bit reflection why this kind of model is needed also in Central Europe. As some of you are coming from Poland, you are aware like about the backlash in Central Eastern European countries, and then we move totally to the praxis. And I'm really looking forward to hear about two practical implementation of this deliberative democracy. The first will be Esther from Tempelhofer, and the second one will be Salman Manon, Climate Assembly Brussels. So, why this panel? Originally, I'm coming from Slovakia, so right now I'm in the middle of this development, which is Slovak society facing with this disempowerment, surprise, nationalisms, voting for fascists, and also huge polarization and fragmentation. This is not a special case. We are seeing it mostly in all the countries around the world, in some region. I'm based in Berlin, so we had the regional election right now, which were a shock in a way also for the German society, as the younger generation vote for fascist or Alternative für Deutschland, AfD. And this is something that we would like to reflect and inspire you or challenge you to ask us to have a discussion, as this is the essence of this model, to engage directly in the society with the citizens. And now it's a bit tricky what I will say, to have a rationalized discussion, which means in this word full of fake news, deep fake, and social media, I'm doubting this, that we could have a rational discussion, but the case studies will show you, yes, we can. The question is if we can do it on the national level. This is a challenge that needs to be called by all the stakeholders, but we can definitely do it on the local level. And sometimes, and the big thinkers in the past already said once, that when you are building a democratic model, you need to start from the basis, from the local level. Because the local level is the nearest one from the structure of the system, the nearest one towards the citizens. I would maybe finish with two provocative for me, not for me, but like basically from the European science landscape thinkers. One is Slavoj Žižek, and the second one is Philip Bloom, a German historian based in Vienna. And both are reflecting these challenges. Slavoj Žižek quotes once time, "You need to see just the Hollywood movies to see what is coming to us, the science fiction, that we are basically building a new aristocratic regime based on the elites that are having the money and they are deciding, even you have a voting system." Philip Bloom said that we are challenging two different topics. The first one is the demography and the second one is the technology. And we, as we are evolving, aging, we can't cope with the technology innovation. It's basically proof that the societal development will come after 3 generations. But the technology development is right now. So this is the insight, and maybe I will handle the microphone or the word to my first guest, and we will talk more about what kind of model do we have, what are the challenges, and where are the good practices in Europe.
Okay, thanks a lot, Viera. So, starting us off, I come from an academic background. I'm a professor of political science, but at the same time have been involved in several practice-oriented designs of democratic innovations. So I'm kind of trying to bridge this gap between the theoretical side and then the implementation of what it can mean, and might be a good sort of introduction to the rest of the panel as well. So, when we talk about democracy, what is it that we actually mean? If you ask a politician what they think about democracy, they usually focus on elections, on this mechanism of how to get to representation through a process of voting, maybe referenda if it's about deciding on a specific topic. But when we think of democracy in these very narrow terms, we lose upon a lot. We lose upon the ability to talk with each other, to discuss policies, and basically to try to get as many different opinions together about how to solve a certain problem. And when we talk about alternative models, this is this big umbrella term of deliberative democracy, about including discussions in our decision-making process. Now, in this community, we usually try to prefer the term democratic innovations, because it's much more specific to the point of actually creating a new way of thinking about the process. The process of decision-making in a classical sense would be you go out, you vote, you get your representative elected, the representative makes decisions for you. And the process sort of repeats every 4 years or so. In the democratic innovations process, it's about bringing together a group of people, including stakeholders, including civil society, sometimes politicians, and regular people off the street. There are various tools that you can use to achieve this. I'll mention a few. And letting them discuss what would be the best solutions. So, one of these tools, and several of us will focus on this in more detail, is citizens' assemblies, which is a way that you bring together a representative, randomly selected group of citizens. You know, the bus driver, the shopkeeper, the accountant, people who might not even vote on a regular basis. Bring them together to learn about what you want them to discuss, and then have the time for them to discuss these things in person. sounds a bit strange, but this is what we talk about when we say democratic innovations. It's moving outside of the box. It's trying something that has not been tried before. Because when we focus on elections, we only focus on the people who actually can vote, who go out to vote. What's the average sort of percentage of people that do vote in your countries? It usually falls in between, Belgium has obligatory voting until recently, but it falls within a huge sort of spectrum, in a spectrum of about 40 to 60% if you do not have obligatory voting. What about the rest, the other half of the population who do not vote? Through these kind of democratic innovations, you also bring together their voices. You bring them to the table, and you bring their experiences and thoughts on board. Other forms of democratic innovations, for example, include participatory budgeting, a very specific tool on trying to include communities to design on how budgets will be reallocated, a certain degree of the budget. And I can mention more like deliberative polling, citizens' review initiatives that go before referendums, and several more tools. These are all tools in our democratic toolbox that serve a very specific purpose. A way that you can expand the voice of the population and that you can expand the number of people to be included in your decision making. Now, why would you want to limit your democracy only to elections? You can do that on purpose if your aim is to narrow down democracy. If your aim is to make democracy just as controllable as possible by a political elite, be this party or be this leader. And we see this in several countries that have autocratic tendencies, that the civic space for inclusiveness is limited, is being limited. At the same time, in places where you still have some ability to voice a position against the regime, you have these democratic innovations. It's no sort of dilemma that some of these countries, such as Poland, such as Hungary, are also at the forefront of this initiative of building democratic innovations into their systems. Other countries which have difficulties in functioning, Belgium, which has gone the longest without a national government, Bosnia, which is one of the most dysfunctional countries in Europe, are also at the forefront of this initiative. They're the ones designing various forms of democratic innovations. And it's exactly in these difficult contexts that you can try to find these alternative models or innovative democratic models on how to solve some of the problems. Because when decision makers are either not willing or incapable of making decisions, this is where citizens' voices can help. The solutions that usually come out of these processes are something new, something that has not been seen before. Solutions that can sort of go outside of the regular political realm, that can include more people, that can be more welcoming. And in the end, it also raises the legitimacy of every decision that's being made. Through this inclusiveness, we're actually able to get more people on board. And the decisions, in the end, political decision makers will still need to be the ones making them. In the end, they're there to be the end of the policy-making process. Those decisions have much stronger legitimacy. So Ireland was mentioned. Ireland had a huge problem with its constitution. Its constitution explicitly said that marriage is only between a man and a woman and that abortion is banned, constitutionally. And politicians did not or could not want to change it because they always had the Catholic Church watching them behind their back. So who would actually commit to making those constitutional changes through election promise? I forgot the name of the Prime Minister now. He actually said that he will put this on to citizens, to a group of citizens, to come together to discuss whether they want to change it. And through a series of citizens' assemblies. The Irish constitution was changed to remove the ban on abortion and to allow for same-sex marriages. Something that could have not been even thought possible 20, 25 years ago. It was one of the most strongest Catholic, conservative nations in Europe, and this changed in a generation, and this changed by input through citizens' assemblies. We have these successful examples on how democratic innovations can bring policy forward, even at the highest national level. It's difficult. At the local level, it's a bit easier. We'll hear a few of those examples next.
Thank you. We are moving to the next speaker, Eva.
Thank you. My name is Eva Bördös and I work for a Hungarian NGO called DEMNET. And DEMNET, since its establishment back in 1996, has always focused on advocating for better cross-sectoral dialogue and stronger active citizenship. And after 2010, once the Orbán government came into power, a couple of years later we figured that this is actually getting more and more difficult. So the traditional ways of public consultations stopped working. Citizens started trusting our democratic institutions less and less. There was a proper backlash in democracy in Hungary, and there was a government propaganda against civil society organizations. In the second part of the 2010s, we understood that we need to innovate somehow, and we need to find new ways to keep democracy going and fight these tendencies. And we started focusing on democratic innovations in 2017 as part of an EU project. And for years, we only reached the theoretical stage, but after 2019, after local elections, we saw a change in leadership in many of the big cities. And these cities also find themselves in a very difficult situation, financial situation, for example. The formerly locally collected taxes from that time on, especially after COVID hit, were collected directly by the government, and these municipalities also saw a curtailing their jurisdiction. So some of them were thinking how to innovate and what kind of local governance to provide to their residents. And they were open to innovate and experiment with these democratic innovations. And this is how we started organizing local level citizen assemblies in Hungary, in several cities. And initially, I was actually quite skeptical myself, thinking, would this work in Hungary? Would this work in such a challenging context and in a polarized society? And I was happy to see that, yes, they work. And actually, these processes give a lot, not only to the citizens, but also to the municipalities and decision makers who organize them. And they are indeed capable of building bridges between citizens and also between citizens and decision makers. So this can really help us reinvigorate democracy and can, showcase that another type of democracy is indeed possible. So we went on organizing more and more deliberative processes and also started cooperating with others across the region. And yes, Poland was definitely one of the countries that were leading the ways in Central and Eastern Europe. Well, we see more and more of these processes taking roots in Central and Eastern Europe under very, very challenging circumstances. And I'm actually just happy to tell you that there are 2 local level citizen assemblies currently ongoing in Ukraine under war time. Something that many of us would not have believed that it was possible, but it is possible. And I'm actually quite interested so curious about these processes and all the lessons learned that they will provide us. So the question is, again, Could this work? Yes, they can, but we have several challenges that we need to also should not overlook. And one is that we are at the very beginning of this path yet. So very few processes have taken place still in Central and Eastern Europe, and though we are seeing a deliberative wave across the globe, essentially, especially in the OECD countries, the Central and Eastern European region is still lagging behind. So this is partly because our decision makers are a bit more reluctant in experimenting with these processes, and also citizens themselves do not really believe that these processes would make any sense. We last year conducted a national level public survey in Hungary, and we found that 2/3 of the citizens do not believe that these processes would be feasible in Hungary. And 2/3 of them cited the disinterest of politicians, and also 40% mentioned that they do not believe that other fellow citizens would engage in such processes. So the skepticism there, I mean, in our country is quite palpable. But interestingly enough, they also said, more than half of the people said that they would actually participate in these processes if they had a chance. So if they were approached by their local mayors, or by even local politicians, they would actually take part in these processes. So there is a skepticism, but also there's a palpable, hunger for being involved, for getting our voices heard, and for cooperating with each other, actually. And we've seen that these processes can really, can be transformative at the local level. So people start self-organizing after these deliberative processes. They actually become a lot more conscious citizens, and they want to have an impact and make an impact on the lives of their communities. So there are lots of challenges, but all in all, I'm quite hopeful that there's a bright future ahead of us, and we should not give up on democracy. Not even when the situation is difficult and when the circumstances are challenging.
Thank you very much. And now we dive a bit more deeper in really what does it mean to live it. So I would like to introduce the third speaker, Esther from Tempelhofer. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, it's such a privilege to be here today with you two. I'm from Berlin, born and raised, and from this very impressive panel, we, in the big picture of what's going on in Europe and the bigger world and all of these theories, we now move to something at first seemingly very, very banal and super, super local. But because you travel to Berlin, I'm very, very excited that I can introduce this to you, because I think it's one of the issues that keeps coming back up in conversations in Berlin about local things. And I personally am convinced that politics always, or can seem sometimes so abstract, but it always goes back to the local level. And on the other hand, in the local issues, all of the global discussions also suddenly pop up. So, I'm Esther, I'm from the initiative Tempelhofer Feld. Maybe in the next slide you can see what the Tempelhofer Feld is. This is Berlin. And you can already see that there's one big dot in the middle. That is the Tempelhofer Feld. It's the oldest airport of the city. I hope that you can all see it. I know, of course, where to look. But as the oldest airport, relatively soon it was clear in this new in the early 2000s that it doesn't make any sense to continue running it as an airport. So the city made the decision to close it down as an airport in 2008, and that brings us to my initiative. So what I want to do in the next 5 minutes is to explain to you what the situation was exactly, how we approached it, and then what we learned from it. With the closing of the airport, the city immediately made the decision to construct on it, because it's really, really, really valuable real estate. It's basically gold. And so they wanted to sell it. It's actually quite expensive to build on it. They had different plans. And in the interim time, they wanted to open it up as a public park to the citizens of Berlin. That happened in 2010. And the citizens of Berlin took a look at this, and basically said, well, this is gold, but not monetary gold. This is gold for us. It raises the quality of our life significantly. And actually, we don't want buildings on it. We want to keep it as a public park available for everyone. And if you have a couple of days more here, I would also say have a look at the place. Maybe you will see it. Why we fell in love with it so much. And basically, it became quite clear from the beginning that there was no middle ground. The government didn't give a question of, oh, do you want to build on it or not? They were quite clear that there would be constructions, and a lot of people in the city from very different backgrounds, for very different reasons, were also quite clear that they at least want to have the discussion about it. They want to have a say in it, and they want to see what the city thinks. Now, the interesting thing is that for a lot of people, so this was, for example, the master plan. That's what it was called. How it would look like. They wanted to have a little bit of a park in the middle, so they said that it wouldn't be everything, but the character of it, the feeling of going onto this field and seeing the sky and having the wind and all of these things, that would significantly change. And I think the big question behind it is who runs the city. If you can go back to the graffiti. So that means wem gehört die Stadt in German, and it basically who owns the city, but it could also be who runs the city. And I think that's a little bit the main question why so many people were attached to this project also. Yes, they loved the field, but there were also questions about climate change. There were questions of citizen participation. There were questions of housing politics, gentrification, class struggle. The Tempelhofer Feld, one of the neighborhoods next to us, is one of the highly densely populated areas in Berlin where people don't have a garden to relax. So it's all of these things suddenly culminated in this very concrete project. And I think that really made it easy for us, because suddenly it wasn't abstract. Suddenly it was this question of, well, do you want to have buildings on there or not? So I think the moment it was clear that there was no possibility to discuss with the politicians and the decision makers, a group of people basically came together and sorted out their options. They thought about, is there any possibility for, to stop this by suing, litigation? What are the options? And early on, it became clear that there was a new tool in Berlin, actually introduced a couple of years earlier, of direct democracy and of referendums. So they formed, a citizen initiative, 100% Tempelhofer Feld, and they started this process of a referendum. So a referendum in Berlin actually is a process of 2 years. It's 3 phases. You have to collect signatures from citizens in different amount of times, and it ends in a referendum where every person in Berlin can make a vote. It's always a yes or no question. So you basically enter with a written text that is either a recommendation for the politicians or an actual law. The actual law is the one that actually then, with a successful referendum, is part of the Berlin, the normal Berlin law. So it's a lot more successful to say than just a recommendation, which politicians can easily ignore. And they started this, they wrote the law, they started this process, and then we started to collect signatures. And I think that's one of the things that I would take away from this time more than anything else. I was a student at the time. I think for 3 months in the winter, collected signatures for 6 hours a day. I think the main bit for us was that we were talking to people in an insane amount of time, probably a lot more than some of the politicians who were making these decisions. And it's not that everybody agrees, obviously not, but I think this momentum of people coming together who are not paid to do this, I think that was one of the things that really played into our hands, that people realized that we were just really passionate about it. That made a difference. We talked to people on the street. We had these little, we had these campaigns, flyers. We were also a really diverse group of people because it was so concrete. You had the academic next to the person who was in unemployment for decades, but really loved this park. So we had this really diverse group of people, doing all of the materials, writing the materials, and that allowed us to actually reach out to the city in a different way. And I mean, now it's a little bit different. Now we also do a lot on social media. We also had a little bit of social media, but our main goal was actually to say, we want to start the conversation. And yes, we have really good reasons why we all think that this park should stay a public park. But our main goal for now is that at least the city can decide. That at least we make it to the referendum. And then the people can actually say, do they want to have buildings on it? Do they buy into what the government, into the plan of the government? Or do they want to keep it as a park? And if the city says, we want buildings, we want construction there, then it's a different base for the decision, and then all of us can sort of continue with our life in a way. So we talked to people. We really went out into the place. We did a lot of fun guerrilla stuff, because I think this is horribly 2013, but I think one of the things that I wanted to show with this is that we also had a lot of fun. We made really the most out of it. The one is from New Year's Eve, super dedicated, I know. Sorry. And I think the thing of going into the city also meant that we met the same people, or different people of us probably met the same people in very different scenarios. So I once said it, I very often collected signatures before clubs, the Berlin club scene. You have long queues, so you can have a conversation with people, they're relaxed. And I met somebody, one night I met somebody who was like, well, today on the way to work, I met another one of you guys, and he gave me, we had produced a newspaper so that people would get as much information as possible, and he gave me a newspaper, and now in the queue of the club I meet you, so tell me about it. So this constant repeat, this constant visual reminder, and again, of course, not everybody engaged, but I think for a lot of people it was this kind of thing of like, okay, at least I want to be part of the discussion. At least I want to have an opinion. So the next slide is actually the election vote that then people were able to vote on the 25th of May 2014, so exactly 10 years ago. And I think for us it was sometimes a question of how much are we tapping into populism? Because we don't want that. We want people to make their own decision. We want to educate people. We want to really, this question of, in what kind of city do we want to live? That was our main question. And then the politicians actually did something that, for us at least, answered that question. The first one is our bill. The bill to keep the Tempelhofer Feld free, basically. And the second one was a bill that was introduced by the government, which was called the bill to keep the free spaces of the Tempelhofer Feld free. So the one was to keep the Tempelhofer Feld free, and the other one was to keep the free spaces of the Tempelhofer Feld free. And they had sort of predetermined which was the free space, which was a tiny bit in the middle. And that really, for us, when we heard that, we were quite shocked, because we were like, okay, how do we explain that to people? It's very nuanced. How are people supposed to get this? And we really had to have this thing of like explaining to people exactly, these are the differences, this is the nuance, it will sound very similar, but this is what you get when you vote for the one thing, the other one is what you get for the other. In the end, we won. I will probably never forget this moment, because it was really, we had no money, we were maybe 50 people on the core team, and then we did this whole massive thing where every fourth person in Berlin had to vote with yes. And not just that, but regarding the question of education, we won in a massive amount for our bill with a yes. And then the second bill, the one which was, the bill to keep the free space of the Tempelhofer Feld free, also lost with a massive no. So people had clearly understood what both of these things, stood for, even though it was phrased super, super, super similarly. And that was really something that made us realize that this was really something for the whole city, that education actually works, that going into all of the arguments and into content really works, and that this question of how to run the city is really something that people want to be engaged in. So last but not least, if I come to the learnings, I think, first of all, it's not over yet. The government never changed the idea of building on the Tempelhofer Field. Just a year afterwards, they already said, well, we need to start the discussion again. They changed the bill a little bit. There's a constant back and forth, and it continues up until today. I think what I would say is citizens are very well aware when you're asking them an actual question or when you just want them to confirm what you want to hear. If you continue bringing back the same question again and again until you get the result that you want, people will check out of democracy. And it's really something that we see in our everyday life. I would say that the Tempelhofer Feld has become a symbol of hope because people were amazed by the fact that we managed to keep it open, that it's now 10 years of an open field, of a public park, but it's also a sign of struggle, of a lived democracy. So really, for example, this year, that just finished, that was one of the last things that happened. The new government of Berlin wants to start the discussion again, so they said, okay, we know this is something that is super dear to the people of Berlin. So we will start with, sort of an assembly-like situation of randomly chosen people from all over the city. They will go into this process of I think they called it workshop of dialogue or dialogue workshop, whatever. They had a fancy name for it. They paid a fancy firm to do it. And based on that, we will then continue with creating sort of a competition so that the field can be developed in the best possible way. They were a little bit surprised when after 3 months, the result was that every single group out of that assembly said, we don't want construction on the field. Every single one. And now we have the discussion that actually the politicians in the Berlin Senate are saying, well, thank you for the feedback, we're still going ahead with it. And I think the damage that this is obviously doing to democracy shouldn't be underestimated. I think on the other hand, it's also interesting that it goes on. It just continues to go on, and there's so much that people can do to actually, at least in Berlin, I would say, stop these things from happening and engage in a dialogue with each other. And the more you actually ask the question, and the more you actually invite people to participate in that, the more they're going to come up with ideas and ways to participate.
Thank you. I love Tempelhofer Feld. This is a racing paradise for me, so I will be on the barricades together. So, the last but not least, I will give floor to Manon. Even you have a younger initiative, just 2 years, but you did tremendous job. And maybe we will dive a bit inside the case study about the structure, how you build such a assembly, what it means to engage with citizens. So,
thank you, Viera. So, hello. So, my name is Manon, and I come from Belgium. So, first of all, I would like to thank you for all the organization. It's a very, very great pleasure to be here. It's my first time. I'm working for Brussels Environment, so it's not an NGO, it's the administration of Brussels that works for climate change and climate issues, and more precisely, so I'm working for the citizens' climate assemblies. So you can move further. Yeah. So why Citizens Climate Assemblies was created in Brussels? So as you know, the effect of climate change are already having an impact on our lives, and we are going to have to make a number of choices quickly and collectively. And these choices will have consequences for all the people of Brussels. And so it's important that citizens are involved in order to arrive to a long-term vision that is shared and supported as widely as possible by the people in Brussels. So, in other words, the government of Brussels wanted to set up a public debate where the citizens of Brussels are in the center of the contribution of the decision-making policy. For your information, there have already been 2 cycles. So one cycle about housing and another one about sustainable food. You can move for the other side. Yeah. And the other also. So that's all the process of the Citizens Climate Assembly. So first of all, you have the agenda setting committee. So people from the previous cycle, so it's 10 citizens, they will choose the topic of the next cycle. So what topic might be relevant for the next cycle? So we will work with the citizens and other actors like institutional actors, economical and social actors. And so after the feedback of these several actors, we have another meeting with the citizen, and they will decide so the final theme of the next cycle. You can move from the other. So when we have the topic, we will have 2 random draws. So a first one about 10,000 citizens in Brussels, so they will receive a letter. And the only criteria taken into account for the first random draw is that the citizen should be proportional to the size of commune, of municipalities. For your information, there are 19 municipalities in Brussels. And depending on the answer of the citizens, we will have another random draw. And there are socio-economical criteria like educational level, gender, languages. And at the end of the random draw, we will have around 65 to 100 citizens that will participate to the cycle. So in total it's 6 days. There are sessions during the weekend, so not during the weeks. And the first step is what we can call the learning phase. So we will explain the mission of the citizen, what are existing due to for the topic. So it's all the knowledge that people would know. After the second step, it's so we will start from the experience of a citizen, so their life. For example, for the cycle 2 about sustainable food, we will ask, okay, how many times per week do you eat meat, or are you vegetarian, and so on. So it's more a debate and a deliberation phase. And after, we also organize roundtable with different experts with different point of view to arrive to a recommendation. So for the first cycle, there are more than 80 recommendations. It was too much. For the second cycle, there are around 35 recommendation. It was better. And for the next cycle, the cycle 3, we would like to have around 10 or 15 recommendations. So to facilitate the work of the government. So when the cycle is ended, we have what we call a follow-up committee. So it's a committee with 10 citizens who participated to the cycle, and they have 1 year mandate, and it's for the quality of the process to follow the work of the government. You can move to the next slide. So they will have an official return, 2 official returns. First one, 3 months after the end of the cycle. It's a first feedback on what will be done. So it's more a technical follow-up. And after you have another official return, it's 1 year after the first one. And it's to show what has been or will be realized. So it's more concrete. And the minister will mandate his administration to analyze the work of the assembly. You can move to the other. And in general, in the Citizens Climate Assembly, you have what we call 2 support committees. So you have a temporary committees with private academic experts, so linked with the topic of the cycle. It's for the quality of the process. And you have another one, it's more long-term support committee with climate, democracy, participative inclusion experts for the general process and to be sure that all the voices of citizens are included. You can move forward. So, as I said, so it's a very new project, so from 2022, and there are, of course, several challenges. So, first of all, you have, of course, the challenges of diversity and representativity. So, as you know, draw has limits, so some people doesn't answer to the letter, especially the vulnerable people. Of course, also about languages. So in Brussels, it's a bilingual region. So we speak French and we speak Dutch. But as you know, we live in a multicultural world. So it's not possible to do this kind of project in like 10 languages because we don't have the budget. So it's also challenges. Another one, it's about remuneration. So for the first cycle, people receive 35 euro per session. For the second one, it was 75 euro, and we saw that the participation increased because of the money. It's the Citizens Climate Assembly, and climate, it's not an interesting topic for everyone, especially for vulnerable people, because they have other problems, so that's a challenge too. Another one is the engagement of citizens. So, as I said, it's in total 6 days. Some people say that it's not enough. So, more weekends, more difficult to participate because people work during the week, they have children and so on, so it's difficult. And on the other hand, less weekends, less time for citizens to work together. So, for the quality of the process, it's a bit difficult. Also, the trust in political system. So I think we know all this problem in the world. Also about visibility. So, you know, I'm here in Berlin, and thank you that the Civil Forum Society invite me. We received some messages from Canada, United States, or Korea, but in Belgium, some people doesn't know the project. So it's a problem that it's not knowing at the local level. And finally, 2 other challenges. So in Belgium, we have many similar projects. So when people receive letters after the they don't care about all these projects. And finally, a big challenge is the follow-up. So Belgium is a very small country, but very difficult country because we have the national level, we have 3 different regions, and some rules are for the federal level. So yeah, it's a bit difficult. What's important to know is that the Citizens Climate Assembly is put it on the climate law in Brussels. So it's an obligation for the government, but on the other hand, the final decision making is from the government. So to have a feedback sometimes it's very difficult to know. So I would like to end my presentation here by asking you the following question. So, as a citizen, if you were to take part in a climate assembly or assembly, what results would you expect at the end of this process? So, thank you very much.
So I think we have 20 minutes to go. 15, okay. So I will squeeze my time for question as a moderator to just 4 questions, 1 for each speaker, and then I will open the floor to you. So I think I will start with this first speaker. It's something that I will challenge you as an intellectual. Can be a democratic innovation, because I think we are coming from, majority of us from Central Eastern Europe, where the problem usually starts. So can be democratic innovation models misused, and when, how?
That's actually a very good question. And it's a process, it's a tool, and of course the tool can be misused like any other one. And it's our job as practitioners, as civil society people, to make sure that it's not misused. And we cannot do that alone. This is also a discussion that we're kind of having within this community of how to ensure, first of all, best practices, highlight these best practices, and be able to trace and track processes that do not fulfill them and call them out. Essentially to identify when it has been misused. Elections are misused. Referenda are misused. They're all democratic tools that can be misused, and so can these. Now, for elections and referenda, we have mechanisms. International organizations that track these and that can call out not just whether it was good or bad, but what specific elements of, let's say, an electoral process are not good. For democratic innovations, we're not there yet. We need to build this.
Eva, not challenging, but more or less like, because I was really inspired that the initiative came from the local cities, that was there a demand, even because of the gerrymandering, which is amazing study in Hungary, like how they are moving the electoral boundaries. And my question is, which region were the most active in Hungary? Because this is something, this is a problem in the East Central country, that you have this vibrant city center with this open liberal society, and then you have the suburban. So which regions are the most active in Hungary?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. But if I may, just to follow up a little bit on what Damir was saying, because that is actually one of my favorite topics when it comes to deliberative processes and democratic innovations. And Damir was absolutely fully right. There's just one thing, that there are guidelines available already. So yes, no institutions are there just yet to kind of like provide oversight or just rub a stamp on certain processes, how good quality they are, but there are guidelines available, and the OECD and the Council of Europe and even the European Union, they all work on this, and there are best practices available indeed. So what is important, I believe, is that we meet all these guidelines and so-called minimum quality standards, if I can call them this way, and we do not use labels such as citizen assembly to processes that are not that do not meet these guidelines and minimum quality standards. Because this is when if you start doing that, this is when it can also backfire, even though despite the best intentions. But moving on to your questions, we actually approached every single big cities, major cities in Hungary. In Hungary, there are a couple of so-called cities with county-level rights. And we sent a letter to every single one of them offering our support and suggesting that we organize a citizen assembly together. And several of them responded, mostly those who were led by politicians and mayors belong to the opposition or were led by independent mayors. And we started working with several of them, and we again see really good results. But here I would warn against linking these processes to any of the political parties or any regions, because the real strengths of these processes lie in their non-partisan philosophy. Essentially, and if we take a wider look and zoom out, we see that not only leftist politicians initiated these processes, but there are several conservative politicians all across Europe who are also very much in favor of these processes. So I believe that this kind of a dialogue is possible, regardless of geographical, position or political party position, which is a good thing and gives us hope, I believe.
We slide to the political sphere. This was not the intention. I was eager if there are some cultural, historical patterns that you can grab and redefine it. This is also basically when you are doing the model, that people are historically more active because something happens in the past, or like the disconnections. But to move to Esther, I had a couple of questions, but just one. After your successful run to win back the Feld, was your story or became the story inspirative also for other German cities, German initiatives, or even internationally?
Yes, end of question. No, I mean, on the one hand, it kind of never ended for us because the conversation is ongoing and it's ongoing today. But within Berlin, I mean, the tools for direct democracy were sort of, I think they were made possible in the Constitution 2006, and then were really implemented in 2008. So it's also not a long time. So basically, afterwards, we were approached by a lot of initiatives within Berlin, then within Germany, of course, and also within Europe and internationally. And I think it's, first of all, it's always very inspiring for us. It's to see that others have the same questions and the same problems, and that really also this question of how can you start to have these discussions. And of course, every circumstance is always a little bit different because it depends so much on what is the law in the country, what is the situation. For us, for example, if the Feld had been sold, we couldn't have done anything. It was just because it was still in the property of Berlin that we could even do this. But I think the questions, even though every situation is different, the questions, what can we do and how can we organize us in civil society? How can we also work, in some ways together with politicians, because it shouldn't be citizens versus politicians. It should be civil society in a way together, engaging also with decision makers, and to see what is a good strategy. How can we foster these conversations? That's something that really is the same. Whether it's, for example, in Seoul, activists came to us who had exactly the same situation with an airport, because you have lots of old historic airports who just don't meet the requirements anymore, so they have the same discussion. And we're now in the time where climate change probably is one of the biggest threats, or the biggest threat for humanity, where actually these big, large open spaces also can play a role in climate adaptation for cities. So it's actually quite interesting to see that a lot of cities have the same problems, same questions, and that also the housing question actually for all major cities is the same one, that it's always this question of what is more important, quality of life, climate adaptation, or housing. And of course I think our answer as civil society should be that it's not an either or, we need to have good answers for all of these things, and that's why we need to engage in these conversations.
Thank you very much. The last question from me, it's more because like climate change is something that is discussed over like the youngest generation. You have this sort of movement, but climate is it's a bit technical topic. How you secure that those terms that you used and after the discussion pushing with the mayor, how you use that the citizens actually understand it? Is there like this community of these researchers involved, or you basically give them before it a short introduction of what is mean by the technical terms, the climate, housing, decarbonization? I can name them, all of them. But
Thank you for the question. So in the first session, we explained technical roads, and during all the session, so it's organized by with a round table, and there is one or two facilitator by table to explain, to follow the citizens, so not to lose the citizens during the cycle. So yeah.
thank you very much. So 10 minutes? 5? 8? Okay. Mm-hmm. Feel free to ask.
You hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I will have a question to Esther. Stand up, yeah, probably. I'm Oskar Hochmeister from Prague, and I would be interested what the final goal is with the airfield, because I was here a few years ago. It looked the same as a few days ago when I also visited it. It's amazing. But what's the final goal? So you said the struggle is ongoing with the local government. And is the ultimate protection or planting of trees or like removal of asphalt, like I would like to know what the ultimate goal is and how is it achievable with relation to local governance?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. I think the ultimate goal is exactly that it stays the same. But within the concept, also within the law that we wrote, for example, there's a lot of project-based work that is possible. So in a way, the character of the felt stays the same, but I mean, you have basically the outer ring, for example, where you can have a lot of possibilities by project-based work. So for example, there's a theater, for example, that is now on the one side of the field. There's a plan for all of these different things that were actually also worked on by citizens in different formats. There's also something called Feld coordination, where basically citizens were voted into this kind of committee that works together with the local government, and that is responsible for the field because it is legally owned by the city of Berlin. So it's one of the official public parks. And within that, again, it gives a lot of space for actual innovation, for festivals, for possibilities, how to work on it, to bring culture, civil society, sports, accessibility, all of these things together. I think the point stays that the character of the field, to have this free space that you can then change and rearrange and redevelop every year new, should stay the same by not building on it. Because the moment you have concrete constructions on it, that's something that you cannot take back. And I think for us, one of the things, I mean, obviously our focus is the field and the development of that with citizens within the possibilities of not changing the nature of the place forever. But one of the things that we would also always mention is that next to the field, you have the building of the airport, which is legally not part of the field. So the former airfield is a different legal entity than the building. And up until now, there's, again, no plan for the building. And it's a massive building. It's protected by, monument laws. It has a crazy complicated Nazi history, like everything in Germany. So it's a little bit. So it also belongs to the city, but the city doesn't have a plan for it. So there's no, parts of the buildings are used, but not everything. And it's really one of these things where, and we actually have a second airport that was also close, Tegel, where it's a similar discussion, where we would probably say the Tempelhofer has become a model for citizens working for something, and then also working actually with local government for a more free-spirited, changing system. Why do you want to build on that now when there's so many other projects that you could actually tackle first? So yes, the goal is that it stays an open, fluid space for a lot of things.
So we have 5 minutes, so we can have easy 2 questions, really short one.
Oh, sorry, it will not be short. Sergei Sveshenko, Civil Society Forum, just elaborating on what Esther has just not just said, but previously in her speech. So, because how I would be interested also to hear from other speakers. So, how do you see the possibility of combining the needs? Yes, so just on the one hand, the quality of life, climate, but also the housing, like in Berlin. So just I think so. Sometimes I have a feeling that there are no good solutions or no bad solutions. So just that because you really need to come to a certain consensus. Also, so during the referendum, during the citizens' assembly or whatever, and but how to satisfy as many participants of this process as possible, So just what is your idea about this?
Okay, so perhaps I'm going here. So especially exactly what you were saying, that sometimes there are no good solutions or right solutions. Sometimes there are no obvious solutions. This is why we need deliberations. This is why we need these deliberative processes. And this is why we need to reinvigorate, social dialogue in our society. But what is social dialogue and how does that take place? In Hungary, I can confidently say that we often say that there's some public dialogue or social dialogue on something. There isn't. It's just the elite discussing, or a few civil society organizations talking to their the usual suspects. But we do not reach or manage to reach a huge chunk of society. That chunk of society who is becoming increasingly more and more, apolitical or populist, or and that creates polarization. This is why we need these new tools and methods to re-engage those who are already disengaged. And discuss all these challenges together that we do not have obvious answers to. And we're experiencing more and more of these difficult issues. The housing crisis is one of them. The climate change is one of them. And these forums provide opportunity for people to really engage in each other and also in policy issues. This is why we think that these tools are so super powerful and has great potential. And from a decision maker's point of view or perspective, these processes also give them lots of legitimacy to act. Because there have been a proper consultation or proper decision-making process before the decision actually takes place and is being implemented.
I think Eva said everything. I'll just add one sentence, and that is that populists offer simple solutions to complex problems. And you're right, there are no simple solutions to all of this. Deliberation is there to offer a more cohesive and comprehensive solution that bridges these different elements and gives a whole solution that includes everyone in society. It's also a tool against populism in a way that it delegitimizes these super simple solutions that solve everything with one, flick of the fingers.
And just one more thing, so these new deliberative processes can be combined with traditional forms of consultation. So participatory budgeting can have a deliberative element. Domir mentioned the citizen review initiative, which takes place before the referendum happens. So there are ways to integrate these new type of processes into the traditional or the old ones.
Okay, so thank you very much. One. I think we are out of time, but we will stay here for a while. But is it short?
So I live in Brussels, I haven't heard about. But I'm living in my garden. So one question, the training materials you use to train the average citizen, is it available online? Because I think plenty of people would be interested. And also the recommendations which were given and to be implemented are the public as well. And it's so simple to give in the website. Thank you.
So, if I understand your question, it's about the results of recommendation? No.
About the training materials you are using to train people, is it available online? That everybody can benefit from it? Like open source. And the second, the conclusions, the recommendations, are they published?
The recommendation and all the process is everybody can see the process of the assembly and the conclusion of a recommendation. If you want, I can give you the website after. Yeah.
Let's move on. We are concluding here.